Marketers can't find success if all they're doing is selling deliverables.
Should you kind of allow the marketers to experiment with your money? And if that project fails, should you then hold that marketer accountable for making that decision?
I think that until you've learned how to deliver the results, you probably shouldn't be charging, or you probably shouldn't have a role whose responsibility is to drive the results.
Hey, Reggie. So we've built a platform for marketers. Day in and day out, we speak to marketers. And we've done that for close to a decade and a half at this point. What do you think is a consistent challenge with being a marketer, with hiring a marketer, in your opinion?
Marketers can't find success if all they're doing is selling deliverables. I think it's clear. You'll have short-term success maybe. You'll sell to some clients. They'll stick around for a handful of months. But deliverables are really only going to take you so far. Telling them, hey, I'm going to post 10 reels per week for your brand, or I'm going to send out one email newsletter blast every week, or whatever that might be. If you're selling deliverables, long-term success, long-term growth, profitability, it's always going to be a challenge for you.
Right. So for a brand, for a business that has hired marketers, it's very tempting, right, to be happy about all the work that marketers are doing, right? They've written content, they recorded videos, they put up a billboard, right? You can't really disregard the effort either. Without the effort, the results aren't going to come by, right? So how do you balance, and also, I guess with marketing, the results aren't necessarily immediate. We run a lot of marketing for ourselves where this sort of asymmetry of marketing versus outcomes is very obvious due to trials, due to seasonality, due to way people sign contracts. You market today to win over the business in a few months, right? So for that reason, I feel like evaluating the effort is important. Mm-hmm. But as a business owner, like, how do you evaluate the effort while being able to predict the outcomes?
I think the effort is important, yes, but you wouldn't judge your plumber's effort if they don't deliver the result of fixing whatever the problem is you call them for, right? Or
Sure.
Go to a fast food restaurant, the sandwich comes out a mess and it tastes bad, but hey, there was effort and that counts. So effort, sure, but results are more important. And I think for marketing, it's just a longer time horizon to find that there has been results or that you've driven that for a brand or for your client. But I think in my perspective, you have to look at results. You have to, because at the end of the day, we're not a nonprofit. Most likely, as an agency, your clients are not nonprofits unless you manage socials or manage marketing for nonprofits. But there's always an ROI that we're looking at. And if you go 6 months or you go a year, and let's say your goal as an organization was to increase brand awareness, so you want to see increased reach, increase impressions, increase engagement, ultimately, growing your followers. And in a year, you've managed to grow 4%, 5%. That's nowhere near the goal that you had. It's time to start thinking more seriously around.
So how do you avoid, right, falling into this trap? Because arguably, and I've heard that over and over again from marketers, that it takes time, mm-hmm. right? Everything takes time. The brand awareness takes time. Brand trust takes time.
Sure.
I find it very challenging to balance this need to give agencies time, right? And again, I'm kind of talking about it from the business perspective.
Sure.
From the sort of perspective of utilizing marketers or working with marketers. And I think the short-term results are also possible. So ultimately, I think that sort of is the goal, right? The goal is to respect and trust the sort of the efforts and the tactics, right, of their day-to-day, right? But at the same time, out of the gate, to be sort of insistent on results, right? And also, getting into the relationship with the marketer is also a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
No pun intended to marketers, but I've certainly had very blunt conversations sometimes with with marketers on their perspective of relationship with their customers. And unfortunately, there is a lot of this, I'm going to get into the relationship with a client, or let's say I'm going to get hired, and then I'm going to have 6 months to show any outcomes. And it seems like this 6 months figure is pretty persistent, that I'm going to have 6 months to show results. And from the business perspective, 6 months is a long time. It's a missed opportunity. It's expensive. And if the execution is not pointed in the right direction, then you just potentially wasted that amount of time. So that balance of deliverables and being held accountable to the deliverables, for the business to insist on seeing the actual results, like could be let's talk about social media, then growth of followers, right? Growth in engagement. What do you tell a marketer who is not able to accomplish that? Do you tell them to change tactics? Do you tell them, or do you allow them to convince you that you just need to wait?
Want me to be really honest?
Yeah.
I think that until you've learned how to deliver the results, you probably shouldn't be charging, or you probably shouldn't have a role whose responsibility is to drive the results. I think the opportunity here is find a mentor, learn, and until you're able to drive results, you really shouldn't be selling that in itself. It goes off a cliff. You're going to go off a cliff. You're just going to come to a point in time where that relationship is going to end because you haven't been able to drive results.
But at the same time, you did all you could. You did all the right things. You wrote content, you posted content, you put up that billboard. I mean, you did all the right things. A lot of people go to school for that, and I'm sure you did all the things that you were taught. You had a prior job, and you did all the things you did over there, right? But all the while, the results aren't obvious.
Transparently, it sounds like if you're doing the right things with the right strategy, then the results will be there. If
So
it's
you're
not,
telling me to wait then?
I'm telling you
more
that if 6 months in they haven't delivered the results, then they are not doing the right
What
thing.
about 3 months? Is that reasonable?
Depends on the activity, right? Different marketing avenues will give you shorter term versus longer term results, like ads, right? Mm-hmm. First couple of weeks, you should be able to start seeing results, and then you optimize for it. SEO is definitely a longer game. When we talk about results, is there momentum, right? You shouldn't expect to be every single keyword on SEO to be page 1 within 3 months,
Right.
maybe not even a year. But if you're seeing momentum, meaning you started on page 100,
Right.
and 3 months in, you're now at page 50.
Okay.
That's momentum.
Okay.
That is results.
So that's telling me that you still can have the systems in place, both as the business who's hired an agency, but also as an agency. You should have those systems in place that deliver on this sort of in-flight sort of progress, right? Yes, we're not on page 1, but we are not on page 100 either, so we're making progress, right? Mm-hmm. So you should look, as an agency, right, or as a marketer, you should look to making sure that the beneficiary understands the progress you're making,
Yes.
even if the outcomes are not there yet, right? So I found
it's a communication thing too, right? Because if you go into that relationship with the expectation or with the guarantee that in 6 months I'm getting to page 1, that's a very different conversation when 6 months in you've only gotten to page 50. Now, if you as a marketer understand how long certain things take for you to drive results for, like full, complete outcomes, and it's a year, whatever that guarantee is that you're giving, you should be really good at delivering it within that time frame. Because the second you under-deliver, I think that's really where the challenge becomes too. You can have that conversation at the 6 month mark, but if you've given them clarity that, hey, getting to page 1 could take us a year, but we're confident that by 6 months we'll make sure that every major keyword's on at least page 20, then that's something else to go based off of at 6 month mark.
Right. I've also found myself in situations where the marketer would offer activities, right, that are clearly right, such as, say, paid ads, for example, right? They're clearly right, meaning that obviously people do paid marketing, right? So it's not like it's a new concept. But based on my experience, right, it's a very ineffective method or a very expensive method, or perhaps even both sometimes, right? But yet you have the marketer who is with conviction selling you the idea. So should you kind of allow the marketers to experiment basically with your money? And if that project fails, should you then hold that marketer accountable for making that decision? How much leeway do marketers have in making mistakes or wasting time or wasting budgets? Or because I would argue this. So if we hired a developer and developer in the end, I don't know, creates a system that doesn't work, the system doesn't work and it doesn't reflect well on that developer. The developer could do it once or twice more, but it's not going to really be a good relationship where you have a resource who just doesn't deliver. Right. I feel like with marketers, there is a lot of that. And I say that not so much as sort of as a critique, right? Because I feel like it's a tough environment. It's not an easy thing. Like in coding, you could argue that, hey, you got a task, you just write some code and it's done. It's verifiable that it's done. It's you versus the code. So you can always get it done with some help. Versus here, you're trying to drive influence, you're trying to drive attention of other people, which is harder to do in a noisy environment, with others outspending, not an easy environment. So I'm not suggesting that marketing is easy by any stretch of imagination, and nor am I suggesting that most marketers just don't know what they're doing, right? But I do say that like I had to learn to kind of get into the conversations with the marketers that that I work with. And while there is a sense of lack of sort of accomplishment sometimes, right? Or oftentimes, as a matter of fact. And it creates kind of like this vibe of dissatisfaction. So like the stakeholders are dissatisfied with the outcomes not being sufficient. The marketers are dissatisfied or unhappy with this constant barrage of criticism potentially, right? That things are not being done. So I feel like in marketing specifically, probably in sales too, by the way. So I feel like sales are also kind of very hard to predict sort of environment. I think it creates this vibe of sort of general sort of nervous energy in the marketing team. And it's been a bit of a learning experience for me to kind of, on one hand, drive the marketing teams, push them to deliver, but at the same time, kind of do it in a way that fosters kind of productivity versus anxiety.
Right. Look, I think I'll go to a meeting that I had recently. I get cold emails probably every single day. And, oh man, the rare moments where I decide to respond to someone telling me, oh, I can 10x your business, I can get you 20 more calls per week, whatever, right? I rarely answer because I know that a lot of this is copy-pasted stuff. It's duplicated efforts that they've done. So I got on a call recently, and the guy had a great pitch, phenomenal. And so I asked him, great, look, have you worked with B2B SaaS? Have you worked with software companies? Have you, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, okay, cool. Send me some references. I'll have some conversations, and we'll decide. Disappears. So uncharacteristically, a couple of weeks later, I decided to email him back because I really liked his pitch. Okay, we're excited to potentially do business with you. Can you send me some of those references that you talked about? Ghosted. As in some of the questions I had asked about results, about performance, about being held accountable towards whether or not the results are driven by the 3rd, 6th, and 9th month. I think it made him nervous that the type of relationship was going to be the kind of relationship where we were going to hold their organization accountable. So I think there's a lot internally with a marketing team. I think it's clarity of communication and accountability. If we can't hold a marketing team or a marketing team member accountable for driving the results, how does then the developer or the support team member feel when they mess up?
Yeah, this reminds me of what I refer to as a $5,000 a month trap. I've noticed over the years, you live long enough, you start sort of developing these sort of patterns, pattern recognition. I've hired enough SEO agencies in my life. And the way these conversations often work is that one of the questions is like, okay, what's your budget? And after some little back and forth, turns out, remarkably, we always arrive at a $5,000 a month. I don't know how it happens, but I guess they kind of figured, a lot of them, that 5K is kind of what every business can kind of afford, more or less. And like, okay, so let's then, for $5,000, we'll write that many articles. We shake hands, we go on. Some time goes by. We'll look at the results. Months go by. We'll look at the results, and the results aren't there. So we go back to the SEO agency, And we ask, how come there are no results? And they're like, oh, that's because you're only spending $5,000 a month. So at some point, the last agency, like an SEO people that we try to hire, I finally decided to kind of change this around a bit. And when we talked about the budgets, I kind of reversed the conversation by asking, okay, so tell me what the budget needs to be so that I can, so we can be on the first
the results
pages and whatnot, right, of certain keywords. Is it $10,000? Is it $20,000? Is it $50,000? I'd like the number. As a matter of fact, in all honesty, that's exactly how I was looking at this, because if that's what it takes, why spend less and get nothing? Why don't you just spend the right amount of money? And also they ghosted us, right? Because basically that's not their business. Mm-hmm. Their business is a $5,000 a month for 10 articles. But imagine if you are a business out there and you're having to hire people who are simply going to charge you for deliverables, right? So I guess kind of back to the start of our conversation is that marketing for the sake of deliverables is, even if it yields outcomes, it's going to be accidental.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult both for the businesses to hire marketers as a result, because you tend to judge people based on the work they do and not sort of as often, or it's harsh to evaluate people based on their outcomes. It's a harsh environment to be in. It's a very tough situation to find yourself in when you have to evaluate the person's performance, not based on the work that they've done, because you can like observe somebody and they're diligent and they are showing up and they're putting extra hours. And it's very tough to then say none of it matters because the results are not there. But as a business owner, I think that is a must. You have to be able to sort of cut that out if that's sort of happening. But I think also on the part of marketers, it's almost unwise to be thinking that way, because ultimately it's just going to create that environment of just total dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
And I would recommend just simply just investing your time into understanding the tools you could use to measure progress, the activities, and really approach it that way. And oftentimes it's very difficult for the marketer also because they come with a certain baggage of knowledge, right? The past work, the past companies, the past experiences. But it's not often, if not rare, that things that worked for another company would work here.
Yeah.
Different products, different times, different customer bases. A lot of things could be different. So not an easy kind of problem to solve. But I think at a minimum, if we begin to measure our relationships based on outcomes and not based on deliverables, we'll be in a far better shape.
Yeah. And I think it's only fair, right? I've had to have a tough conversation in a previous organization with a team member that was, let's say, delivering quantity. They were delivering the right quantity of the output that I needed them to do, right? But the quality wasn't there.
Right.
There were things not happening. And they were in marketing. But at the same time, now that we're having this conversation, I think through how unfair it is for us to hold other employees accountable for their results and not their outputs compared to then the marketing team or a marketer or an agency.
I think it's across the board, right?
Yeah,
I think it's across the board. I think it's hard.
It's sensitive. I don't know
so
why,
I think it's
but
for like in the case of developer, it will be very difficult for developer to say, in 6 months, this is gonna work in 6 months. You know what I mean? Like you don't have projects like that. I think for the support person to say, oh, you know what? Like in 6 months, the ticket answers are gonna get better. You know what I mean? Because these things are immediate, and that's kind of why I am kind of separating marketing a little bit.
Sure.
But it's not protected species either.
Yeah.
Right. So it's still, while more difficult and while more challenging, and while the results are maybe more irregular, there are ways to measure progress. And part of the issue also is that not a lot of marketers understand how to measure and what tools to use, etc. So when you hire somebody, perhaps try to evaluate if they are able to set up the necessary systems, and if not, make sure they exist before you get going. Because everybody kind of want to get started, want to get those articles out there, want to get the content out there. But if you don't have a baseline, if you have like where you have like a way to constantly like measure your progress, you're gonna fail. So again, outcomes are more important than deliverables. And without the systems in place to measure outcomes, you will most likely not achieve your results. And I think that's kind of ultimately the sad truth here. So,
Absolutely.
awesome. Thanks.
Thanks.